So, if you're ready, we can go. My first question, of course, is about the title of this film. Why do you choose this title, Space Cadet?
Okay. The title is based on my second graphic novel. It's called Space Cadet. And the reason I picked that for that story was, well, half the story takes place in space. Celeste, the main character, is an astronaut who travels through space. But also, the robot, her guardian parent figure who's left behind on Earth, is sort of an older model robot, is approaching obsolescence, and he's beginning to malfunction a little bit in the memory department, and so he's forgetful and kind of starting to have moments where it's starting to be quite odd, where he's disoriented and stuff. So the idea of a character who's also getting lost in his own mental space a little bit, yeah. So they're both space cadets in my opinion, but generally speaking, it was it's a space-based story, but also outer space, but then also mental space too.
As a musician in the thousands, and a figure on the famous Ninja Tune label, you were already nurturing the ambition of writing a graphic novel at this period of time?
Yeah, in the year 2000, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, my first graphic novel was called Euphonia Must Fall. It was a story about a robot that was trying to write love songs, but he didn't know how to sing, so he had to find another way to create a song that would resonate like a love song. And that was my first foray into a long-form comic book storytelling, and then I had so much fun working on that I started writing Space Cadet right after the tour for Euphonia had finished. Yeah.
How did the idea of the graphic novel come to you?
For Space Cadet?
Yes.
It was really a way for me to process a lot of stuff that was going on in my life at the time. I think I had just lost my grandmother, who was very dear to me. She'd passed on, and a couple other close family members. So there was a lot of this reminiscence and thinking backwards to charming times and shared moments with those that I was close to. But then also, I was expecting the arrival of my daughter, my first daughter. So I was about to become a new parent, and then also, seeing my life in the time, in the cycle of generations, it became very clear to me. I was like, oh, this is a juncture in my life where I'm sort of in the middle, and I can see the past clearly, and then I don't see the future clearly, but then I'm excited for it, And so that book was really a way to process that, and it ended up being like a celebration of my favorite memories.
Can you tell us about the moment when you say to yourself that it will become a film?
That wasn't my idea originally, but we did do a book. So the book and the soundtrack came out, and the book also doesn't have dialogue. So in a way, it could kind of feel like a screenplay to a silent film that has not been made yet. But after we toured to launch the book, I was pretty much was kind of finished with that project. But on the tour, Jeanette Petit and Nathalie Bissonnette from Outsiders Films, they came to one of the shows. They were introduced to the characters, and they bought the book, and they heard the music in the concert, and they were the ones who said, oh, if we can expand the script a little bit from the graphic novel, this could be a feature film. And so they reached out and proposed, that as an option for a feature for that project. And I didn't know. I come from music, right? So the budgets for films are much higher than in music. So I did when they told me, yeah, we think it would work as a film. I was like, okay. So I signed them the option, the rights to try to produce it as a film, and they spent like a lot of years assembling the funding and finding a screenwriter to expand it. And Mylène Cholet was her name, was the screenwriter, and she did a beautiful script. So
let's talk about the shape. You just said that the music was here before the film. So can you speak about the sweetness, either the sweetness of the story, the sweetness of the music as well?
Okay, yeah. So the original book had 15 tracks, not enough for a feature film, but it was meant to score certain scenes, and some of those have remained in this score. And a lot of new music was composed as well as some songs where I invited some singers to contribute to the score too. But I think, music, the relationship between Robot and Celeste is a very supportive and sweet one. So often I would just start on piano, and then maybe add some turntable layers and stuff, and then I'd bring my friend Vid Cousins in. He'd help orchestrate more strings and horns over certain things, but whatever the scene needed, really. If I think back to the original score with the book, I remember writing one with Maple, with my daughter in my arm as a baby, and actually writing it very quiet, kind of lullaby piano thing with my other hand, and recorded it. And so it all that tone and that experience kind of just brings up all those memories for me. So when we approached doing more music for the score, I would start on piano too, and try to get back to that feeling. Yeah.
Would you say that your film has an optimistic vision, or that it has an utopian one?
A what?
A utopian one,
A utopian or a optimistic? I think when I was trying to create that book, it was a personal just way for me to cope and celebrate the life of my grandmother and stuff. And so similarly, I wanted to keep that intact here. So I didn't want it to be a bleak film. I wanted it to be a film that made you smile and made you possibly think about your own experiences and those pivotal moments in your childhood. And so there's a reason for the pacing, the music, even the design. When we were talking about it, is that we did want to leave space in the film so you're not bombarded with so much information that you don't have time to draw on your own memories, while you're watching it. And I think when you watch a dialogue-free film, it's a little bit more of a puzzle for the audience, because there's no talking, there's no word. You have to imagine and project what that character might be feeling, and in order to do that, you might dig into your own childhood memories and things. And I wanted that to stir that up, somehow. Yeah.
Did you have any animation reference in mind when you first drew the robot, for instance, of the novel?
Yeah.
And did you have seen, because there was in the 2 years, I have in mind 2 robot films.
Oh, right.
One that is, I'm not sure of the title because I will say it in French or translate them. It's My Friend the Robot, the first one, on the Wild Robot.
Wild Robot, yeah, of course. Animation, well, we started planning this animation. We did some tests as a 2D, scratchboard style, like the original graphic novel, but we found that it was too distracting because it was boiling a lot. It was too many hatched lines, and too high contrast. And so when we decided to move to CG, we still wanted to keep kind of handmade feel. So our art director, Corinne Merrill, she worked on Le Petit Prince. She did the stop motion, all the paper stuff on there. And she also creates all the miniature maquettes for our live theater shows with the puppets and stuff. And so we said, okay, even though we're in CG, let's try to make it feel tactile or crafty in a certain way. And so they designed it with that in mind, and both like visually, stylistically, but then also how dense, you know, in the original graphic novel, I might have drawn robots sitting on a chair, but the room is pretty much empty, maybe one or two pieces of furniture in the back. I didn't want to like slam it with all this information in the back. So we tried to keep that kind of simple, you know, focus and composition in the film too. Yeah.
Also, the film is quite sweet. It's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
It could be also a little bit sad.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
I mean, you speak about loneliness.
Yes.
You speak about it's the grief at the heart of the story. When you imagine a robot that can take place of the man, for you, is that something positive, or on the contrary, this is something critical of our current society? Because we are designing robots.
We are designing robots, but I think if, you know, to me, I have one thing I look for when I'm experiencing art or trying to connect with it. It could be a painting. Maybe it's not a style I'm used to, but I'm always trying to search for the intention or the inspiration behind it. And if I can find that inspiration, it doesn't matter to me what style it is, so much as I'm inspired by the fact that, oh, someone made this painting and they were very, very passionate about this style. And so it's the same thing for me, even with technology. You know, on the one hand, you could see it as a threat, like, oh, it's here to replace you and automate everything, and then you don't have anything left to do. Or you can look at it like, oh, this might open some new doors. Or if you just even look at, you know, not even a computer, if you look at a piano, you know, there's technology there. It was designed in a certain way, very crafted, a lot of science, a lot of passion was put into creating an instrument that could play a certain way. And then I think the musician's job was to, how do you tell a story using that technology, whether it's a piano or whether it's a computer or whether it's a robot. So when I see robots, I see a lot of human intention to create something, and I try to focus on that. It's a more optimistic view, you know, where it's like, they're trying to make cars drive by themselves. It's not like they don't want anyone to ever drive their own car, but the challenge was like, is it even possible, you know? So I think that's to me kind of interesting and inspiring to see, even in technology. But I'm a scratch DJ, so obviously I like technology, you know, like a mixer and sound effects and stuff. But at the end of the day, I do like the combination. Like I like the tactile playing of the record and cutting it back and forth, and it feels like a fun way to use, you know, physical energy, you know, in your lifetime too. Yeah.
Adapting the graphic novel into animation, what was for you the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge about adapting a on paper graphic novel to a film, I think, was keeping the tone intact, but that required me to learn a lot of new languages. So if this is my first time directing a film, and prior to that, I didn't know what gamma meant in terms of lighting. I didn't know what frames in terms of time meant, you know. So I remember my original conversations with some of the animators. I'd say, just wait 3 beats, and on the fourth beat, then this should happen. And they're like, but can you tell me how many frames you mean? How long is that in frames? So I had to learn what that meant for them in time, because they weren't used to the music terminology. But I think once I found that common language, or would figure out how to express time through frames, it helped. And the same thing with camera moves, like I didn't know what an orbit was, or this was a truck, and this is a push in, and this is a track shot, or whatever. All these terms that I had to kind of learn on my first day, But luckily the team was very patient with me and just teaching me the terminology to talk to them in the technical terms that they needed to understand, what I was trying to do.
Would you say that working in a big team like this is quite similar to what you have done when you were working with team? Because this is one of your peculiarity, that you work with Radiohead, Gorillaz, Beastie Boys, DJ Shadow, for instance.
Yeah.
So you're quite used with working in teams.
Yes, I think with the pipe. Well, I mean, yes, I've been very lucky to be invited on these tours and to see these productions, at work, but it's still very much a real-time thing. I know, okay, the show starts at 8, from noon, they're already setting up the stage and the lighting and blah, 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 and you can see the process of that. I think with the animation part, which was a surprise to me, was there is a production pipeline, different stages and different departments that you were working with, and not simultaneously. So one of the interesting things to me is, like, for instance, you might have to make your camera move decisions with the layout team prior to seeing what is fully on the screen. So even if it's like, oh, here's a card with some writing on it, all you would see is a car, like a gray rectangle, or a wire frame. Like, you wouldn't really know the depth of some of the shots, but you're making camera and lens decisions. So that was a new process to me, because when I'm drawing, I kind of make the camera angle and the pose of the character and the lighting all at the same time. I'm making them simultaneously, but in animation, you might work at different times. It might be months apart, and then all of a sudden those people are in another project and you can't go back, so it's one of those things where along the way, you might have to make some adjustments to get the most impact out of the scene. Yeah. Which was new to me, very new. Yeah.
May I ask you maybe a personal question? Because you said that when you were writing the graphic novel, you were just a father. I think that your child now has grown up.
Yes.
And that she?
Teenager. Yes.
Has she watched the film?
She has watched a earlier version about a month ago, like a earlier edit, not the finished. And she has seen it. She was moved by it. Yeah, she laughed in places, and then was sort of stirred, emotionally in other moments. So, but I mean, she's a very empathetic child, so I think she's sensitive to those themes. Yeah, she liked it. Yeah, I don't know if she just said that because we asked her and I'm her dad or whatever, but I could tell she was watching it, and by the end, she was surprised by some of the plot that was in the film, but I think from an emotional level, she resonated with it. Yeah.
The film is here at the Generation Plus section. Would you say that your film is intended for a global audience or for a more specific audience?
I think it was. This is a kind of a full circle moment to me, because I think before I got into even music, when I was very young, I'd watched this Charlie Chaplin film with my grandma and my mom, and it was the first time all three generations enjoyed one piece of art, you know, and I, to this day, there's only a handful of times I can remember like all three generations of my family doing something together and all liking it, you know. So those silent films at the time were that for me. One of my fondest childhood memories is hearing my grandmother laugh so hard and enjoying the film with her. So moving forward, I was like, when I grow up, I do want to create that type of energy or connection with an audience if I can, you know. So fast forward several decades and we're here now. I do feel like the best case scenario for me would be, it's a film that you share with your family or you share with your parents or your children or your grandparents. And so when I hear that, well, I'd mentioned this in the Q&A earlier that a journalist I was speaking to said, I can't wait for the theatrical release because I definitely want to take my niece and my nephew and my grandmother to this film. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful, you know. As far as global audience, yeah, absolutely. There's no dialogue, so it's pretty much, you know, able to translate, hopefully, just from the action, you know, what's happening. And
making a silent film, as you did, was it something for you that was more a constraint or more freedom?
More freedom. I mean, and I do have some experience with it. I think both of my graphic novels don't have dialogue either. So the idea of a time-based narrative without dialogue is not new to me. I've been doing that for a long time. But also our new theatrical productions, like we do New Phony Must Fall live and the Storyville Mosquito live. And this is a show that has like 8 live cameras and 20 maquettes and 70 puppets, and we perform, film, project, score, and Foley, everything in one take with a team of 15 people on stage. And so those shows we've toured around the world and they don't have dialogue either. So I think it's become like, I don't feel it's a constraint. It's almost like, it's a fun way to approach storytelling for sure.
And maybe my last 2 questions. First, has the film already been screened here at Vernon, and what was the reaction of the audience?
Yeah. To me, I was so elated and just happy with hearing the audience laughter and then hearing some sniffles like during the sad moments and stuff. It just means that it was connecting somehow, you know. And I imagine whatever, there was definitely this type of focus feeling in those moments in the theater, and then to hear the spontaneous laughter, I love that too. So it's really why we do it. You know what I mean? Eventually connected to an audience again.
And my last question, has the film already has a French distributor?
It does not yet. I don't know. I think this is literally the first time we've ever showed it. So I guess
or even a Canadian distributor?
We have a Canadian distribution in place, yes, but nothing in Europe yet. Okay. Yeah, so I think hopefully, you know, that will get sorted out soon, maybe even here at the marketplace. So, yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.